Adab, Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, greetings. I am Surinder Deol welcoming you to my new YouTube channel, Ghalib Demystified, the joy of classic Urdu poetry. I love Ghalib's poetry and so do millions of other people because Ghalib was a philosopher poet. There is something in his work that we don't find in any other Urdu poet. He lived during a very difficult phase of Indian history when Mughal Empire was coming to its end and a new occupying force was getting ready to enslave Indian people. He came very close to being a dead man, but his presence of mind and his sense of humor saved him. Mirza wrote both in Persian and Urdu. In fact, his greatest desire was to be recognized as a Persian poet because it was the language of the elites at that time. Mirza's Urdu Divan, that most of us are familiar with, contains 235 ghazals. All ghazals are obviously not of the same quality. Some are easier to understand than the others. Some grab our attention more than others. Some have more Persian words than Urdu, and as such they are more difficult to grapple with. But there is one thing we can say. Whatever Mirza wrote was the work of a genius poet. Let me explain what I plan to do in this program. I want to explain, analyze, explore, probe and dissect about 120 ghazals out of the total 235. It may take me more than a year to finish this task, and if I have the support of viewers like you, this work is doable. I plan to devote each episode of the program to only one ghazal. Okay, before we go there, let me ask a fundamental question. Why should you listen to me? What are my credentials or qualifications to talk about Ghalib? This is a fair question and let me respond. First of all, I would like to say thanks to my father, who was a devoted follower of Mirza's poetry. With his guidance, I learned to read and recite ghazals from Divan-e Ghalib before I earned my matriculation certificate. Then over the rest of my life, I have been reading Ghalib and trying to make sense of his ghazals and couplets. I want to mention another very important person who helped me reach the depths of Mirza's poetry, and that was Professor Gopichand Narang. Within a short span of 7 years, we worked together on many projects. The very first was an English translation of his magnum opus, Ghalib, Mani Afrini, Jadliyati Waza Shuniyata or Sheriyat. That book titled Ghalib, Innovative Meanings and the Indigenous Mind was published by the Oxford University Press in 2017. Professor Narang was not only an Urdu scholar par excellence, he was a very kind and compassionate human being. He became a dear friend and my mentor, and his sudden death on June 15, 2022 was a nerve-shattering event for me personally. His help in the launch of my book on Ghalib, titled The Treasure, in 2014 was also a stupendous event for me. Let me say this. One can never know Ghalib to talk about him in a very authoritative manner. But I can assure you that I know a good deal to speak about the essence of his poetry. Let us get started with the opening ghazal in the Divan. The very first couplet says, Naqsh fariyadi hai kiski shokhi-e tahriir ka. Naqsh fariyadi hai किसकी शोखिए तहरीर का, कागजी है पैरहन हर पैकरे तस्वीर का। I have heard a lot of people say that this couplet has a level of obscurity and complexity that we should not even try to interpret it. I don't agree with that view. The key to understanding this share is to find the answer to the question, Kiski shokhi-e tahriir? Who has done it? Now, Islam doesn't permit questioning about God, what God has done, what was God's motive when He created this universe. When you refer to God, we use words like merciful, almighty, majestic, forgiving, etc. You don't ask questions that require an explanation. You don't doubt God's motives. But Mirza, as we know, was a different kind of Muslim. He often put on his philosopher's hat and he questioned everything. He's asking God, what kind of world have you created? If you believe in perfection, why is there so much poverty, disease, bloodshed, and death? This is not a world that's worth living for a common human being. While the rich and powerful have every comfort, most people live and die in a horrible manner. This is not fair. This is not just. Naqsh fariyadi hai kiski shokhi-e tahriir ka. People are bowing their head and pleading while they marvel at the playful writing, which is a metaphor for creation. In the second line, Mirza uses ancient history to point out that in the olden days, when Persian people appeared before the emperor to plead for justice, they wore clothes made of paper to show their humility. Kagzi hai perhan har pekre tasveer ka. If we can imagine this scene like a movie, we can see those people moving and bowing in their paper attire. This mental picture shows people's utter helplessness. As those folks were hopeless, helpless in front of their emperor, so are we before even a higher authority figure whom we call God. There is pleading, but no answer. There is call for justice, but no response. I translated this couplet in simple English as, words are prayerfully complaining about whose playful writing. Words are prayerfully complaining about whose playful writing. Images of helpless humans are seen petitioning in paper clothing. The world as we see it is a piece of playful writing, but we are powerless as human beings, and our paper clothing is symbolic of our incapacity, our dependence, and our impotence. Before I move to the second couplet, let me take a moment and define Mirza's philosophy of life because he is a philosopher poet. Although he echoed thoughts which were common among Sufi mystical poets, Ghalib was not a Sufi. He expressed ideas that came from diverse philosophical traditions, like the concept of Shunyata, that's a core belief in Buddhist philosophy, and the concept of Maya, that is at the center of Vedantic philosophy. These ideas have deep roots in the Indian culture and its pluralistic traditions. Ghalib gave voice to these ideas, but he did not endorse any one of them. He was not a poet with a mission or an agenda. He didn't want to change the world in a certain way. His main concern was human condition, the miseries of daily existence, and to what extent the Creator bore any responsibility. Unconditional surrender to and love for God, which is the Sufi approach, Ghalib felt was incomplete. In a genuine, loving relationship, some questioning of the one you love was in order. Therefore, Ghalib is an existential poet and not a transcendental one. He cares about life here and now, not in the next life, not in heaven, but in this life here and now. Let us move to the second couplet of this ghazal. काव कावे सख्त जानी हाय तन्हाई न पूछ काव कावे सख्त जानी हाय तन्हाई न पूछ सुबह करना शाम का लाना है जुए शीर का. There are some uncommon words that need an explanation. Kav kave is continuous beating of stones. Sakt jani is when something is creating great agony. Jue sheer is the canal of milk. This is a reference to the famous Shirin Farhad's love story, where Farhad was asked to dig a canal in which milk could flow as a precondition of his attaining his beloved Shirin. The couplet describes the state of discomfort that a lover often faces in his loneliness. When he remembers his beloved, the feeling is that of constantly being exposed to a beating of stones. From morning until the evening, this is the same horrendous experience. It is like you have become Farhad and you are constantly digging that channel. Here is my English translation of this couplet. Don't ask me how I bear the sound of hard stones being beaten in my loneliness. From morning until evening, I am digging the river of milk. The picture painted in this couplet, of course, is the living experience of a lover. Now we come to the third couplet. जज्बा-ए बे-इख्तियार-ए शौक देखा चाहिए जज्बा-ए बे-इख्तियार-ए शौक देखा चाहिए सीना-ए शमशीर से बाहर है दम शमशीर का. जज्बा-ए बे-इख्तियार-ए शौक is my uncontrolled desire that must be seen. Something unusual is happening. You must look at my hopeless situation. I'm so ready to sacrifice my life that the edge of the sword can't wait to be outside its sheath to do its job of killing me. Death is the fate of a lover. It can come in many ways. But when your own sword wants to kill you, it is something you don't expect will ever happen. Here is my English translation. Look at the intensity of my uncontrolled desire. Even the sword is slipping out of its sheath and its breath is skidding out of its casing. The fourth couplet. आगही दामे शनीदन जिस कदर चाहे बिछाए आगही दामे शनीदन जिस कदर चाहे बिछाए मुद्दा अनका है अपने आलमे तकरीर का. आगही दामे शनीदन is the net of awareness that spreads. In this couplet, Ghalib is trying to reflect on his own style of writing. He says, you can spread your net of awareness or understanding any way you like, but the full meaning of my ghazal you will not find anywhere. My poetry is like the mythical bird Anka that we know exists, but no one has seen it. Similarly, The meaning of my shairi exists, but who has the capacity to unravel my writing or my speech? Here is how I describe this couplet in English. Spread the net of awareness to unravel the mystery of my words. Spread the net of awareness to unravel the mystery of my words. You will end up chasing a bird no one has ever seen. This is very true. As we struggle to make sense of Mirza's words, we come to the last couplet or maqta of this ghazal. बस के हूँ गालिब असीरी में भी आतिश ज़ेर पा, बस के हूँ गालिब असीरी में भी आतिश ज़ेर पा, मुँह आतिश दीदा है हल्का मेरी जंजीर का. बस के हूँ while I find fire under my feet when I'm in a state of bondage, मुँह आतिश दीदा है हल्का मेरी जंजीर का. My burned hair have become a ring, something like a chain that is keeping me in this state of bondage. A lover dies in many ways. Asiri is a state of bondage that is self-created. It is like the act of falling in love that is self-willed. The most innovative part of this couplet is the fire reducing one's hair into a ring that looks like a chain. We know that slaves are kept chained, but the love slave doesn't need a chain made of iron. His burnt hair is enough to chain him. Even in this state of bondage, there is a fire under my feet, Ghalib. The chain that binds me is my own scorched hair. That is all for this opening session of Ghalib Demystified. In the next episode, we shall read and examine another amazing ghazal, कहते हो न देंगे हम दिल अगर पड़ा पाया, दिल कहाँ के गुम कीजिए हमने मुद्दा पाया. Keep yourself safe and healthy. Before you go, please hit the subscribe button. फिर मिलेंगे और एक और गज़ल का मज़ा लेंगे. I am Surinder Deol saying goodbye.